Hello beautiful people, and welcome to part 2 of rank 2 of SPAAGs in War Thunder. I have another 4 vehicles we're gonna look at for this video. This time around though only from 2 nations, the Soviet Union and France. So we have 3 from the Soviet Union and a single one from France. And once again I'll look at the vehicle's protection, firepower, mobility and how it all comes together in game. First vehicle on the list is GAZ-MM 72K, country Soviet Union, crew 4, driver, commander, loader and gunner, armament 125mm autocannon, armor non-existent, speed 45 km per hour equals to about 28 miles per hour. And we are back with the Russian milk trucks. Now the funny thing about this vehicle is that it was actually an American Ford AA that was manufactured in the Soviet Union under license, and the Russians built almost 1 million of those. The gun on this vehicle is a 25mm autocannon, and you have 399 rounds with it. You have access to 3 different kinds of belts and 2 different kinds of ammunition. Then FI/T, which is an fragmentation incendiary tracer shell, and you have an APT armor piercing tracer shell. The high explosive shell has an armor penetration of 3mm at 10 meters, and that extends out to infinity. The armor piercing shell can penetrate 46mm at 10 meters, and then it drops off to 33mm at 500 meters. The builds are a little bit obvious. The default one, first fire an armor piercing shell, then an high explosive shell. Then you have a belt with only high explosive, and lastly you have a belt with only armor piercing. Once you upgrade the vehicle, the turret rotation is 24.5 degrees a second, which is just okay. The cannon can fire 240 rounds a minute, which is actually pretty fast, and it's a great thing to have. Now, I said before, the vehicle is just a truck, which means that you have no protection whatsoever. The only protection you do have is a gun shield in front of the cannon, and it's 7mm thick, and it can, stop light machine gun bullets, and that's actually enough to save your hide a couple of times. Other than that, like I said, no armor at all. The only redeeming thing is you have 4 crew members, which means you can swap 1 or 2 out if your gun or driver gets killed. Artillery fire is deadly for this vehicle, so as soon as you see that red warning across your screen, get the hell out of there. The vehicle has a kind of a blind spot almost over the driver's cabin, where you can't depress the gun like you would otherwise. Speed is okay, you can get to 45 km per hour, but the good thing is that you get up to that speed pretty fast. Reversal is pretty poor with only 5 km per hour backwards, and that's almost a crawl. It not being tracked means of course you have issues in snow, sand and water. And also with traction uphill and downhill, where you sometimes get issues with that the vehicle cannot keep its position properly, just kind of slides around. Even though you have no armor, you can easily take this one out as a first pawn, because it's actually pretty amazing as a tank destroyer. Making this video, I actually kill way more tanks than planes with this vehicle. At this SPAA you can penetrate most vehicles from the front and definitely from the side and rear with 46mm of penetration. So either find a nice place to snipe from, or stick with the bodies and act as an assisting tank destroyer. Of course it's also very effective at killing planes, which is pretty much its main role. The 25mm cannon fires 240 rounds a minute, and that is very fast and very useful. 1 or 2 hits and the plane is out of commission. Often with these kind of weapons you start seeing a decrease in fire rate, and 240 is actually pretty high for a single barrel cannon. If the gun has a slower firing rate, sometimes you can see the plane actually fly between the shells, but with 240 you don't really have that problem. The GAZ-AA is great at destroying planes and tanks. Just keep in mind that you're made out of paper. And here we have the only non-Russian vehicle on the list, CCKW 353AA. Country France, crew 3, gunner, driver and commander. Armament 140mm autocannon, armor 0, speed 64 km per hour equals to about 39 miles per hour. And again we have this mix of countries being involved with this vehicle. Now the truck itself is an American GMC. The truck is more commonly known as Deuce and a Half. The model name is CCKW 353. The gun is a Swedish 40mm Bofors and the crew is French. Starting off with a weapon, you get a 40mm Bofors cannon with 384 rounds in total. You have access to 3 different kinds of belts and 2 different kinds of ammunition. You get a high explosive belt with an armor penetration of 3mm at 10 meters out until infinity. You get an armor piercing shell with an armor penetration of 71mm at 10 meters and it drops off to 58mm at 500 meters. The default belt first has an armor piercing shell, then a high explosive shell. The next belt has only high explosive and the last belt has only armor piercing. Once upgraded, the turret rotation is 27.9 degrees a second, and that's even faster than the GAZ we just looked at, and it's quite high for such a big weapon system so early in the game. Switching from anti-aircraft to anti-tank role is extremely fast. You can switch between ammo types in only half a second, and that can definitely prove life-saving in a tricky situation. It's a pretty big caliber for an anti-aircraft weapon this early in the game. As expected, this weapon has a pretty low fire rate with only 120 shots per minute. So, just like the German 6.2, you need to be quite accurate in order to score a hit. But one hit and the plane is down. For some reason, I guess I'm sadomasochistic somehow because I really enjoy this kind of gun. Looking at the truck itself, it definitely has pros and cons. Now it's very long and very low, so you can somewhat easily hide it between bushes, etc. It being so long, on the other hand, also means that sometimes you have issues in close quarters. So turning corners in narrow streets on city maps can be pretty annoying, and sometimes you need to back up a couple of times in order to make a turn. The crew is very spaced out, and that means that your survivability is actually pretty high. If, of course, you're not getting machine gun down directly on the gun, then it's all game over. But usually people will hit you with an AP shell first, and you have a pretty damn good chance to survive a couple of shots of those, because they're gonna hit the transmission or some other non-vital parts of the truck. The truck's biggest flaw is definitely that you only have 3 crew members. And that is a huge fault from Gaijin's side. I don't know why they were thinking that a 40mm Bofors cannon can be crewed and manned by only 3 people. It's just completely insane. The truck we just saw, the GAZ-MM, even has 4 crew members, and that's just a milk truck. This is a much larger vehicle with a much larger gun, and you still only have 3 crew members. I posted about it recently on the Gaijin webpage in the bug section, because it has to be a bug. There's only 3 crew members, so hopefully in the future they'll add at least a commander to make it more survivable. It's a pretty fast vehicle for what it is, 64 km per hour, so you can, if you're lucky, find a good spot and then snipe people whenever they pass you. But other than that, you can take it out as a tank destroyer from the first spawn. The 40mm cannon is very strong, and you can kill everything there is on the battlefield at 3.0. That kind of penetration you have at 10 meters. So find a good sniping spot or stay with your buddies and act as a assisting tank destroyer. As said before, the slow firing rate means that you need to be quite precise in order to score a kill. So it's actually up to you what you want to do. You can easily just take it out as a tank destroyer and don't worry about planes. Or you can choose to be a sadomasochist like me and enjoy the challenge of trying to hit planes with a gun like this. It's definitely possible, and it's very rewarding when you see them fall apart once you hit them. Here we have the BTR 152A, country, Soviet Union, crew 5, driver, commander, gunner, and then 2 loaders. Armament, 2 14.5mm heavy machine guns, armor 13mm, speed 83 km per hour on the road, equals to about 51 miles per hour. So where the previous GAZ-MM could be considered a very effective tank hunter, this one should be more considered an effective anti-aircraft vehicle, and secondary, you have an option to kill lightly armored vehicles. This BTR 152 comes with 2 14.5mm heavy machine guns. You have access to 3 different kinds of belts and 3 different kinds of ammunition. You have an armor-piercing ammunition which penetrates 31mm at 10 meters, drops down to 22mm at 500 meters. Then you have an armor-piercing incendiary tracer which penetrates 45mm at 10 meters, dropping down to 29mm at 500 meters. Lastly, you have an immediate action incendiary, which has an armor penetration of 27mm at 10 meters, dropping down to 19mm at 500 meters. The first belt you have access to has one of each of the ammunition types, and then it just rotates them. The second belt is the most useful one. It's called APIT. It also uses all 3 kinds of ammunition, but it's a better mix of them all, so it has more APIT in it. The last belt is called AIA, and that's the immediate action incendiary. This belt is a mix between the AIA and the APIT ammunition. Now the AIA ammunition itself does not penetrate that much, but its main role is to set fire to the planes. You have 1,200 rounds at your disposal, and that's plenty. I've never run out of ammunition. I would not worry about mixing the ammunition types. Just stick with the second belt once you have that one unlocked, and then use the APIT belt only. You can easily kill planes, and it's also good against tanks. Once the vehicle is upgraded, the turret rotation is 32.2 degrees a second, which is just fine. And the rate of fire is 600 rounds per minute, which is quite a lot. The vehicle itself is actually pretty effective and survivable. You have 30mm of armor, which is enough to stop light machine guns. And the best part of it is that you have 5 crew members, and they're spaced out in this large vehicle. So you can easily get penetrated by 1 or 2 armor-piercing rounds and nothing will happen. And if you're lucky, it will hit either the engine block or just dead space, or maybe a transmission. So if you can, it's actually a better idea to face a tank sideways. That way you present a larger target, and there's a bigger chance that he will hit basically nothing and shoot straight through with an AP round, instead of killing you from the front. From the front, an AP round would pass through the entire vehicle and you could get one-shotted. That will not likely happen if you just present the side to them. So far, this is by far the most survivable of all the anti-aircraft vehicles I've tried out. Even though it's open top and you get straight from there, there's a big chance that you'll survive multiple strafing runs, while if you're in a gas or one of the other milk trucks, a single strafing run and you're toast. The vehicle itself is also very fast, 83 km per hour forward, and even in reverse is very fast, 18 km per hour. I've been able to back into safety, so to speak, on multiple occasions with this vehicle. Again, with a gas truck, it's only 4 or 5 km per hour in reverse, and there's no way you can use that effectively. You will probably have issues penetrating 3.0 vehicles from the front, but you can from the side and definitely from the rear. So once you start a match and kill a couple of planes and you're still alive, then you can start looking for vehicles to hunt, because the bigger vehicles will be hopefully out of action, and then the lower rank vehicle will appear, and you can definitely kill those. So playstyle wise, I would suggest you just stick with your teammates and use this one as a frontline anti-aircraft vehicle. You are surprisingly survivable, so you can stay in the fight for a long time, and then if everything fails, use your weapon to take out some barrels on an enemy tank, for instance, to help your team out. And then later in the match, go ham on all the lighter armored vehicle that'll start to appear. So as a conclusion, as an anti-aircraft vehicle, this is very effective and so mediocre in an anti-tank role. Last vehicle for this video is the CIS-12 94KM. Country, Soviet Union, crew 4, gunner, driver, commander and loader. Armament 2 25mm autocannons, armor non-existent, speed 50 km per hour on the road, equals to about 31 miles per hour. This CIS-12 sits a full BR higher than the GAZ-MM. And although it looks the same, it's an improvement on all aspects of this vehicle. It uses the same 25mm cannon as the GAZ-MM, but instead of one, it now has two of them. And strangely enough, the turret rotation is actually increased, not decreased, as you would think, since the mount has become heavier. So instead of 24, you're getting almost 29 degrees a second for the turret on this one. As the cannons are identical, so are the stats. The same two rounds are available: high explosive and armor piercing. With twice the firepower, you would think you'll get twice the ammunition, but you don't. You only get 130 rounds more than you had on the GAZ-MM. There's only one thing that is not an improvement over the previous vehicle. Because of how the two cannons are laid out on the turret, you do not have any gun shield, so you don't have any protection for the gunner and loader from small arms fire. So you become slightly more vulnerable on this vehicle. The truck itself is also an improvement over the previous one, so you get 50 km an hour instead of 45, and the best thing is that you reach the top speed very fast. So you can use the speed to sprint to a capture point, cap it, and then get the hell out of there before the artillery falls around you, because you don't want to be around when that happens. I think the biggest difference between these two vehicles is how you play them. While with the GAZ-MM you could take it out as a first spawn and use it as a tank destroyer. You could still sort of do like this, but you have to be very careful. Since this one sits a full BR higher, that also means that you're facing much tougher opponents. So worst case scenario is that you're going to be in a full up tier, which means that you're facing 4.3 enemies, and then the gun penetration is not going to cut it anymore. If you want to be brave and use it as a first spawn, then use it as a flanker only. So find a nice flanking position and just wait for the nearest Puma and other light vehicle that will come and try to outflank you. Otherwise, I would probably just stick with the main group and use this one as a frontline anti-aircraft vehicle. You're also facing enemies with pretty much high caliber weapons, so 20mm and heavy machine guns is going to be the mainstay of what you're going to meet. And being strafed by 20mm or heavy machine guns, it's going to take you out of the match pretty damn quickly. So in a way, it's a mixed bag. You have upgrades across the board, but you're gonna face much tougher enemies. This is probably the vehicle I've been killed in the most. I almost forgot to talk about my mantra, but using this vehicle definitely made it all come back to me. So please do not attack anything you don't think you have the chance of hitting. Two things will happen once you start firing your cannons. For one, all enemy aircraft will be alerted to your presence and know exactly where you are because of your tracers, and all other tanks will also. And I guess the third thing, Everybody around you, I mean I'm talking about friendly units, will also be exposed because everybody will look at you. So once you have been spotted by your tracers, all other friendly units around you will likely also be spotted by the plane. And since so many planes have rockets and 20 millimeters and heavy machine guns now, you are very vulnerable. So wait until you're sure that you can hit the damn plane before you start firing at it. This truck has the same issue as the previous one, where you can't shoot horizontally over the driver's cabin. A way to mitigate this is to not drive in a straight line but kind of zigzag. That way you can still shoot right ahead horizontally in kind of 11 and 1 o'clock position. So to sum it up, your survivability has decreased, but your lethality has also increased. I think BR wise, the GAZ-MM is a better vehicle. It's very powerful as a tank destroyer and very powerful as an anti-aircraft vehicle. This one is still very powerful as an anti-aircraft vehicle, but it starts to struggle now with survivability and the anti-tank role. It's still great fun, but you need to be way more careful. Okay, that was it for this video. Please do me a favor and give it a like, or leave a comment if you want to, or even go overboard and subscribe to my little channel. Until the next video, have a good one.